uhattu ko sa uhattanaw ko inom marinig ittuni ulo nikkakaltuni ayo tegalasluti ukarasongalamata ittugalait hallo nammagewaloa kami Englishewaloa kami taman lapatomi kasimagamik siwungani tatsuman tingiyo kaunarulang gimat kasi aligo Inuit hangin lali katalog tatsuman hallo nango kaloa kami Englishim magewaloa kami kasi ali Inuit hangin lali kitsutik tayo sluti awngit taut situya sa mayo inu awngan na takaman na uwa inuyod tayo kuningan ni lotat hindi yun na kunay kata kasi nakatlo na kayo niligiligata awut inu awi unay tangasol takatay mga taut sisu awu nikitino kasi awat itaw kata Ismaya ka sa katas mo kawin mo lang sa ngalo utit titaw niya na tapir si Winnie hangalon din. Saya marlo kawin mo lang sa utit niya na tapir si Gilo utin niya na tapir si Gilo no kawin mo lang.
We have seen over the last 12 years a huge decline in the consumption of traditional food in general. And just in the blood of the participants in 2 studies, we have seen a drop of 1/3 of the content on fatty acids, on the fish fatty acid, omega-3 fatty acids. So a third of decrease.
Okay, can you give me the number one now?
I need to give you a sticker first, Carl.
Can I have your name?
Nain's an interesting place to do a project like this. One, people are noticing environmental change in the community or in the region, potentially change that may be influencing this relationship with sort of fat in the marine or in the terrestrial food chain. Nain is an Inuit community like any other, where it's undergoing a great deal of social, economic, and cultural change. So a lot of changes internal in the community going on, and then a lot of changes external in terms of what's going on in the environment as well. You have these sort of 2 forces going on. The forces going on out in the land, in terms of climate and environmental change and variability that may be changing the fat composition and the kinds of fats in key food species that Inuit are relying on. And then these forces going on within the community around change, around knowledge, around respect for traditional knowledge, and that information that's been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years about the value and importance of fat.
It seems to have relatively little cardiovascular disease among Inuit today, and still today. And the same for diabetes. If you look at diabetes among Inuit, even it's growing, it's still very low compared to Indians that are extremely high level of diabetes. So this is the hypothesis one. Can it be due to some of the fat, or some part of the fat, like seal oil, they use?
Inuit are known to have a very high concentration of omega-3 fatty acids coming predominantly from marine aspects of a traditional diet in their blood profile. So there is this wonderful sort of inverse relationship that exists between ischemic heart disease and the concentration of omega-3 fatty acids in blood. With climate change and environmental variability that we're seeing more of in the Arctic today, with a decrease in things like sea ice cover, there are potentially things going on in the environment that are influencing the fat composition of the environment. We actually do see in the scientific literature a change in the fat composition of those top predator species, such as polar bears, associated with changes in their diet, which are related to changes in environmental conditions, such as a shrinking of ice. We can detect a change in the fat composition of those animals that is essentially an indication of something going on in all of the lower levels of the food chain in the Arctic. The interest with the UTSUK project was to ask the question, if we have climate change and environmental change and variability going on that are potentially influencing fat composition of key species that have always been prized country food species for Inuit, do we have things possibly going on that may be influencing the health benefits of consuming those animals? So is the fat value changing in the Inuit diet?
A lot of people say it's climate change, but we see a lot of different things happening here in the last 5-10 years, more, I guess, and more because it's being talked about. And well, a couple of things is in the fall now when the ice is forming. It takes a lot longer, whereas we'd be on the ice some years before Christmas, well before Christmas. And now the past couple of years have been the middle of January before we could get out on the ice and travel and do our hunting and work and that. So it is the big thing.
People have never seen winters like we've had the last 2 winters. A lot of rain in the middle of winter, ice forming extremely late. Last year, ice forming in the harbor was a month and a half late. Less predictable weather, generally speaking. Also, a tangible change is a decrease in the population of the George River caribou herd. So it's more difficult to access caribou right now than it ever was.
All the traditional hunting areas they're not there anymore. So plus the numbers are going down with the George River herd and the Torngat herd. So that's a big concern for a lot of us here, a lot of hunters. I don't know if we can live on cow meat or not, but I can't picture that because all the wild food that we get is just it's traditional and we've carried it on for years and it is part of us.
Yeah, sit down. Hey, wait for a seal, or ducks or geese. Wait for animals.
Yeah. For the component that I was leading in the community, we had 2 different forms of data collection. One was going out on the land and doing interviews and observing people out on the land in terms of hunting, cutting up animals, and having discussions or having interviews with them out in that context and talking about changes that they're recognizing in the environment, changes they're noticing in the fat in key species. Is there more? Is there less? Is it changing in composition? Are you noticing something that may be potentially an early precursor to change in the food chain in terms of fat composition over time?
Now I am currently working on a ring seal contaminant project. We've finished individual interviews, and those individual interviews involve mapping, where hunters sit down and show us areas they typically hunt or areas of importance to ring seal, whether it's for pupping or for feeding or for breeding. From there, then we also talk about the different things that affect ring seals and any population numbers or changes in the population they've observed, and then also talk about the actual body condition of the seals they've been hunting and whether anything has changed since they first started hunting compared to now. Everything from size of seals, condition of the skin, to parasites and diseases inside that they've seen.
Very crunchy.
So you're saying you see more unhealthy seals now than you used to?
Anyway, more what?
More unhealthy seals than you used to?
Oh yeah, you see a lot more unhealthy ones. No.
What do you think that's from?
It's hard to say. I don't know what not so much food around or too many seals.
Oh, okay.
Like there's not so much capelin around too. Like these years, like before, one time there was a lot of capelin, then no trouble to get their food.
Yeah.
Even more seals now and harder to get the food, I suppose. More skinny one, unhealthy one. This one is healthy though.
Yeah.
Grown up a lot. Kind of small fish.
Mostly digested.
Yeah,
fish bones.
Fish bones.
Yeah, fish bones. Yeah, might be.
So probably small
might be
char
like
or
sculpin or something.
Okay.
Could be sculpin there. Some kind of small fish. Or lance.
Yeah, sea lance.
Sand lance.
Yeah.
Not much in there though.
I really enjoy going out with hunters. I feel like it's a great opportunity to see the process of actually hunting, but I also think it's a privilege to go out with hunters and to actually spend time with them while they're doing something that they always do. I mean, you can read about it or you can hear people talk about it, but it's when you see it firsthand and someone can show you a liver as they're cutting it up and that they like to eat it raw and that, the fat has changed and actually pick up and show you the fat. And it's a really interesting learning experience to see how people, I guess, learn up here.
At the beginning of humanity, they were hunter and gatherer. Their source of energy, their source of protein and fat was only coming from games and fruits. And there were no sugar at the time. It was only fat and proteins, meat and fat. Now the fat in any games, whatever is a caribou or whatever is a whale or seal or a fish, if it's from the natural environment, natural animal, wild animals, will be very rich in these fatty acids, in these omega-3 fatty acids. We should not be surprised to see that it's good for health because humans at the beginning were eating like that.
We don't know exactly when, but we would say at least 2 million years ago, some branch of that primate stock that became humans was in close proximity to lakes and estuaries and rivers, and tended to stay in that environment longer and longer. Still had a small brain because the brain doesn't evolve overnight. So this is a process that is taking hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. And so that exposure to a higher intake of omega-3 fatty acids and other nutrients coming from fish, shellfish, clams, mussels, and so on, would have helped the genetic background in those early hominids to develop more functional brain connections, more neurons, more synapses, more connections. It's the connections that make the brain. And so gradually, that possibility to expand our cognitive potential became available. Is it uniquely because of omega-3s? I wouldn't put all the emphasis on omega-3s, but it's a part of the package. It's a part of the way we live in many respects, but nutrition is a big part of that.
And I can remember my mom saying one time, fat in the fish is good for you. She said, if you eat that, you're gonna have very good brains when you grow up. I don't know what she meant by that, but I thought she was just encouraging me. But maybe she knew something that I didn't. Every time my grandchildren are having fish, I say to them, you're eating brain food. I always tell them, you're eating brain food.
"15 years ago, when I was concluding my research with the Bardi people, omega-3 fatty acids were a very uncommon, mostly scientific kind of term. I think most people didn't really understand a lot about fats. I mean, fats were saturated or unsaturated. There wasn't a lot of sort of public discourse about fats. You know, until very recently, we assumed that, you know, it was only in these northern latitudes that we found these rich sources of omega-3 fatty acids. And the research that we've done in French Polynesia and in northern Australia have indicated that Indigenous coastal people across the world have been looking at and sort of focusing on these marine fats in very specific ways for millennia.
So humanity start to change their source of fat from the natural environment, natural animals, to the farm and farm animals and farm plants. And then the beginning of the shift, starting to have more saturated fats and also having more omega-6 fats. And that take more and more importance in our diet. And after the Second World War, chemists invented a way to have this oil fat from plants, to be able to store them forever by just changing a little bit this fat from plants, and that's the beginning of the apparition of trans fatty acids. In other words, in a few millennia, we lost the good fat and we enter in our food chain really bad fats.
Our life has changed dramatically over the last 20, 30 years. Our way of eating has changed. We've been introduced to so many different foods and culture. Within the span of 30 years, our culture has just changed suddenly.
The other question that was being asked in the project was related to social and cultural change that's going on in communities over a long period of time, but also quite rapidly as well, where we were hearing some information from communities that almost there was a contemporary knowledge of fat and how we view fat in store foods starting to be applied by younger generations towards country foods, of people being essentially turned off and wanting to get rid of the fat from their diets. And that's potentially a concern because these fats in Inuit traditional foods are providing all sorts of benefits. They're not the same as the trans fats and other forms of fats that we find in chips and in deep fried meats or deep fried foods and things like that we're buying from the grocery store. So if we take a very generic view of fat in an Inuit community and apply it to both fat in store foods and fat in country foods, we're potentially getting rid of a lot of the good things in country foods that Inuit have always known about, have always prized and valued for medicinal properties and for health, for energy, And we're starting to see possibly a change in the nature of the relationship between Inuit and fat. And fat has always been a critically important component of the Inuit diet.
Since I'm going to eat it, I'm going to cut on an angle. And that's the way it's supposed to do, because when you dry it, you hang it up and it should all fall open. When you cut it on an angle, when it dries, it should come out perfectly, but all my cuts are not that perfect. In the fall, when they're going back into the brook, that's when they be at their fattest and their healthiest. So that was little bits that I made. It's not the best though, but it should do. It's pretty good. I'll eat this though.
Well, I have smoked charlic about every day. We got a cabin over here, and it's good for fishing, so we're going to go there tomorrow to get some fish. I don't really have junk food. We just have wild food like caribou and seal, partridge. We just usually have that, or sometimes if we don't have none and it's hard to get, we just go to the store and buy some groceries.
Delicious. Okay. Every time I have to do that, I would eat it. Because sometimes I'm grateful for what I've eaten here, to take stuff here. To feel fat. I love it. My boys love the Misiak very much. And right now, the caribou or seal, any kind of wild meat that we eat, we always have the Misiak with it. When the seal is caught fresh, there's no taste to it. So we have to put it in a container and let it rot. And this is how we make Misiak.
I don't think the younger children will be able to eat what we eat years coming, future coming, because a lot of parents are eating sell meat themselves.
If I don't have Misiak quite well, my whole body, I could eat and eat and not get full. Because my body is hungry for the Misiak or shell fat. Me and my wife want to keep a little culture, which is a way of life. We try and really hard to keep it alive. And that is why I like to teach my two boys how to hunt seal and how to survive off the land.
Our younger generation today is more or less used to living out of the stores. They do like some traditional food, but a lot of them will shy away from seal meat and You know, all traditional food like seal fat, they won't touch that.
You can get by in life now without eating traditional food. In the old days, there was only 50 years ago, maybe or less, there was no way you could get by, if you didn't hunt. But now you know, there's checks come in. You know, you can have a steady job, you can be on welfare. You probably have a check come in. You can go to the store, get something to eat. Not good food, just cheap food.
What we do hear in the interviews from individuals is that we hear a concern with regards to the amount of skills and knowledge transmission that is taking place. So there is a concern in terms of knowledge transmission to younger generations. With each new generation, communities and lifestyles are changing so much that opportunities for mechanisms of that knowledge transmission and that skills development are changing or are decreasing quite a bit.
And we go to school and we learn a lot of good things in school system. We do, but nothing about survival though. Nothing about how to live on the land. They don't teach you about our tradition. And we go to school a lot. 5 days a week, 10 months of the year, so.
My mother took my brother out of school when he was 15 just for 4 days so that he could go hunting with my father. And the school principal came down to my house and said he's not getting an education. So my mother was livid, my mother was angry. She asked him, "What do you mean he's not getting an education?" And he said he's not going to get anywhere in life if he doesn't go in school. And my mother said, "Okay, you and I go out on the land. See where that education takes you. See who's going to live, you or me." And he could not say anything. "I guess you would live. That's education," my mother said to him. So what I'm saying is our young people needs to be taught, and I think we're responsible to teach them.
The ideal circumstance or the ideal scenario that individuals really have a challenge trying to figure out and trying to navigate is, how do I succeed in terms of putting cash in the bank or cash in my pocket and country food on the table? Because they essentially are activities that are in opposition of one another, particularly when we're talking about that taking place in an environment that's changing and is becoming perhaps more challenging to navigate safely and have a successful hunt.
But you get after them by the store. Yeah. They don't have no fat on them. Yeah. Something like a rock. Yeah. Too bad they sunk.
Modern life has more conveniences and comforts, but the traditional life has a lot of healthy living in it too. A lot of good wisdom there. So yeah, I think you can I think you can combine them. I didn't think that before, but now as you get older, and I start to think, yeah, there can be a combination of the two.
If we can support more food consumption that's naturally here, that's better, because the fact is that country foods are probably one of the healthiest types of foods you can eat up here. They probably are the healthiest.
And that is the value of traditional food or country food or wild food fats. It really is a critically important or valuable component of traditional diet, because yes, it provides energy. Yes, there's a number of different medicinal applications that people are using it for, But wow, it's protecting individuals from some forms of chronic disease that seem to be on the rise in the population and that exist in other non-Indigenous or sort of in other Western diet-based populations. So some forms of cardiovascular disease, as an example.
And there is not a lot of people in the world that are so lucky to have access to so good food. I mean, they are probably the last hunter and gatherer in the world. And considering the globalization of the market and the arrival by plane and boats of all this junk food, bad quality imported food, there is really a challenge for the Inuit leaders to be able to maintain this gift from the ocean and from the land.
Yeah, that's good. And so right now, within this sort of constrained or rather compromised environmental world that we live in, Indigenous people are faced with some very interesting choices. And so there's almost an ethical reason for all of us, the world, you know, the sort of world of scientists that works with Indigenous people and that cares deeply about their traditions and their knowledge, and the Indigenous people as a group themselves, asking themselves, well, for us to persist in the way we traditionally do, but also in the way we do in terms of our health. These are questions that need to be answered at exactly the same time. And they are the first people to have to ask themselves these questions. You know, I feel there's a sense in which the rest of the world is going to be doing this eventually.
That was the impetus of the UTSUK project, knowing the health benefits of country foods. If this transition is taking place, how can we best deal with it? How can we adapt, and how can we support Inuit communities to be healthier?
I would love to have some of our culture survive, because, you know, it is who we are, and I don't want it all to be lost. I mean, there's so much that's already lost.
I can only affect what I do. Like, for me, I choose. It's not all gonna go away yet. You know, I gotta keep as much of it as I can. So that's my choice. And like, we're such a strong people. I think that the kids have the potential to be strong. Hope they can build kayaks and, you know, go to university, and that would be really nice.
When I go home, I'm going to have sell meat. It's a cookie right now.
That's it. Naku. Taima.